Imagine losing everything in one night: your career, your reputation, your freedom. At the center of Washington's most glamorous gala, a disbarred attorney stands alone, moments away from public humiliation, until a mysterious billionaire steps forward and says four shocking words: "She's my fiancée." What begins as a fake engagement becomes a high-stakes war against corruption, betrayal, and impossible love. And one secret that changes everything: she's pregnant with her enemy's child. Will this unexpected alliance destroy them both or rewrite their destinies? Stay with us till the end, because every twist hits harder than the last. If you love stories filled with power, revenge, and redemption, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more unforgettable dramas to life. The champagne fountain at the Worthington Hotel sparkled like liquid gold, but Maya Sullivan felt like she was drowning. She stood alone in her borrowed navy dress, watching Washington's elite glide past in their designer gowns and custom tuxedos. Every whisper felt like a knife. Every sidelong glance reminded her she didn't belong here anymore. Across the grand ballroom, Derek Castellano spotted her. His smile was cold, calculated, predatory. He'd been waiting for this moment. Senator Patricia Vance squeezed his arm possessively, her diamond engagement ring catching the chandelier light. A few feet away, Victoria Blackwell, Derek's executive assistant, watched the scene unfold with a knowing smile. She adjusted her emerald necklace, a gift from Derek that the senator knew nothing about, and whispered something to a colleague. Derek started walking toward Maya. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing blood in the water. But this wasn't where the story began. 6 weeks earlier, Maya had been packing boxes in her Georgetown law office, watching her career burn on every news channel. Breaking news: federal prosecutor Maya Sullivan terminated amid ethics investigation. The anchor's voice was sympathetic, but the damage was done. 3 years of work destroyed in a press release. The partner who fired her had been apologetic but firm. "You went after Derek Castellano without authorization. His family threatened to pull $40 million in business." Maya had tried to explain she'd found evidence of money laundering, but he'd cut her off. Alleged evidence, which conveniently disappeared from our servers. The systematic destruction happened fast. Her bank accounts frozen pending investigation. Eviction notice on her apartment door. The landlord had been almost apologetic. "Castellano Properties owns this building. They're not renewing your lease." Then came the hospital. Her mother, Sarah Sullivan, lay in hospice care, her body ravaged by stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor had delivered the news with clinical detachment. "Mrs. Sullivan's insurance claim was denied. The Castellano Foundation is our primary donor. They've requested she be transferred to county facility by end of week." Maya's hands had trembled. When? End of week. But the worst had come at an urgent care clinic, where Maya had gone for what she'd thought was stress-induced nausea. The doctor had returned with test results and a question that changed everything. "Ms. Sullivan, when was your last period?" "I don't remember. 2 months? I've been so stressed." "You're pregnant. About 8 weeks." The words had hit like a freight train. Maya had stared in shock, mind racing. 8 weeks meant the baby was Derek's, conceived before their breakup 4 months ago. The doctor's concern had been clear. "Given your stress levels, you need prenatal care immediately." Maya had looked at the bill, then at her empty bank account. "I can't afford this. I just lost my insurance." At the Bar Association ethics hearing, 3 of her former colleagues had testified against her. They'd called her obsessed, claimed she'd fabricated evidence, violated attorney-client privilege. Maya had watched her reputation disintegrate, hand unconsciously resting on her still flat stomach. The media had been merciless. Once hailed as the Justice Department's rising star, Sullivan now faces disbarment after allegations of prosecutorial misconduct in her vendetta against prominent attorney Derek Castellano. Now sitting in a cheap motel room with flickering neon outside her window, Maya held 2 things: her father's sheriff's badge and a positive pregnancy test. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "The truth doesn't need to be loud, Maya Bear. It just needs to be right, and someone brave enough to tell it." "How am I supposed to fight for truth when I can barely take care of myself?" she whispered to the empty room. How can I bring a baby into this? Paige Turner, her only remaining friend, arrived with decaf coffee and a manila folder. You look like hell, Paige said, not unkindly. I feel worse. My editor approved the story. We publish in 3 days. Maya shook her head. That's not enough time. Derek's statute of limitations expires in 2 days. After that, everything I found is worthless. Paige opened the folder, revealing an invitation to the Worthington Gala. Derek and Senator Vance are announcing their engagement tomorrow night. Every power player in D.C. will be there. It's your last chance. Maya stared at the invitation. Inside her father's old pocket watch, hidden where no one would look, was a micro SD card containing 3 years of evidence. 3 dead whistleblowers had come before her. All their evidence had been lost. This was the only copy left. Paige noticed Maya's pale complexion. Are you okay? You look. I'm fine. Maya's hand went protectively to her stomach. Just stress. Maya, I said I'm fine. She took the invitation, decision made. I'll go. What Maya didn't know was that across town in Derek's office at Castellano Industries, he was planning her final destruction. Derek sat at his desk while Tori Blackwell perched on the edge, reviewing documents. You're sure Sullivan will show up tomorrow? Tori asked. She'll show. Maya's too stubborn not to. Derek pulled Tori closer, completely unconcerned about the senator who thought he was faithful. She thinks she can still win. And when she does, then I finish what I should have done months ago. She'll be arrested, discredited, destroyed. No one will believe a word she says. What about the senator? Won't she suspect something if you're this obsessed with an ex? Derek kissed Tori dismissively. Patricia doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm the devoted fiancé. After tomorrow, Maya won't be a problem anymore. They kissed again. Neither noticed Tori's purse on the desk, where a small recording device's red light blinked steadily. Tori smiled against Derek's lips. She kept all of Derek's secrets, but she kept her own secrets too. You know what I love about you, Derek, she murmured. You always have a plan. That's why you're with me. That's why I keep your secrets. The threat was subtle but clear. Derek didn't catch it. The next evening, Maya stood before her motel mirror in the borrowed dress. She looked pale, exhausted. The pregnancy nausea made everything harder. But inside her father's watch, the evidence remained. 3 years of work, 3 dead whistleblowers. This was her last chance. She placed her hand on her stomach, barely showing yet. I'm doing this for both of us, she whispered. Then she drove to the Worthington Hotel, unaware that 2 men were about to change everything. One wanted to destroy her, the other wanted to save her. And neither was who she thought they were. The Worthington Hotel Grand Ballroom gleamed with old money and new power. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors. A string quartet played softly while servers circulated with champagne that cost more than Maya's monthly rent used to be. Maya entered through the press entrance, using Paige's +1 pass. She felt nauseous, though whether from pregnancy or nerves, she couldn't tell. Her borrowed navy dress marked her as an outsider. These people wore their wealth like armor, and she had none. She scanned the room for Derek, clutching the envelope containing printouts of the evidence. Her plan was simple, probably futile. Approach him quietly, hand him the documents, appeal to whatever conscience he might have left. Make him see that people had died, that more would die if he didn't come clean. It was a desperate plan. But she was a desperate woman. Near the entrance, Julian Hart arrived with William Bradford, his CFO and best friend. Julian moved through the crowd like a shark through water, people parting without realizing why. He'd avoided public events for 5 years, but tonight was different. Tonight, he had a mission. Will leaned in close. Is that her? Julian's steel gray eyes found Maya across the room. Yes. You sure about this? No, but it's necessary. They watched as Derek and Senator Vance took the stage for their engagement announcement. Nearby, Tori Blackwell clapped enthusiastically, though her smile never reached her eyes. She was recording everything on her phone, adding to her insurance collection. Derek's eyes searched the crowd, hunting. When he spotted Maya, his smile turned vicious. Maya tried to approach as he descended from the stage. She had the envelope ready, her last-ditch appeal to whatever humanity might remain. Derek, please, just look at what I found. Before people dump, Derek's voice boomed, cutting her off. Security! This woman is stalking me. Every head turned. Phones came out. The string quartet stopped mid-note. The room went silent except for the rustle of expensive fabric and shocked whispers. Senator Vance rushed over, her face a perfect mask of theatrical concern. Oh my God, Derek, is this the woman you told me about? Yes, Derek announced loudly. Maya Sullivan, my former colleague who became obsessed with me after I ended our relationship. Maya's shock was genuine. That's a lie, you know. This poor, mentally unstable woman has been harassing my fiancé for months, Senator Vance told the crowd, her prosecutor's voice carrying to every corner. Threatening emails, showing up at his office, now crashing private events. She turned to Maya with practiced pity. Sweetheart, we've tried to help you, but this has gone too far. The whispers erupted like wildfire. Isn't she the lawyer who got disbarred? I heard she falsified evidence. Stalking her ex? That's pathetic. Someone call her a psychiatrist. A security guards closed in. Maya felt dizzy, the stress and pregnancy making her lightheaded. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach, a protective gesture she didn't realize she was making. But across the room, Tori Blackwell noticed. Her eyes narrowed with sudden understanding, and she pulled out her phone to make a note. The timing was interesting. I'm not stalking anyone, Maya managed, voice shaking but firm. I'm trying to expose the truth about... Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to cruel intimacy but still loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The truth? Like how your father was a dirty cop? Like how you're just like him, obsessed with conspiracies, destroyed by your own paranoia? The mention of her father, a sheriff who died exposing corruption, made Maya's eyes sting. Don't you dare bring my father into this. Your mother's hospice care? Derek leaned in, whispering loud enough for others to catch. The Castellano Foundation funds 60% of their operating budget. I made a call this afternoon. She's being transferred to county facility tomorrow morning. Enjoy your last night knowing she's comfortable. Maya's face went white, her hand pressed harder against her stomach. This wasn't just about her anymore. He was weaponizing her dying mother and threatening the baby he didn't even know about. Senator Vance signaled security. Officers, please escort Ms. Sullivan out. We have criminal charges being filed as we speak. The security guard pulled out paperwork. Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal harassment and stalking. You have the right to... The crowd pressed closer, phones recording every moment. This wasn't just humiliation. This was the end. She'd be arrested, the evidence confiscated, her baby born in county jail while Derek won everything. Maya looked around desperately. No allies, no escape, no hope. The room began to spin. She felt faint. A single tear escaped down her cheek. Cameras caught it, flash after flash, documenting her complete destruction in front of everyone who mattered in Washington, D.C. And then everything changed. A deep, controlled voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. I suggest you step away from my fiancé immediately. The room froze. Every person turned toward the voice. Juliana Hart walked through the crowd with the calm confidence of someone who owned not just buildings but the very ground beneath them. The sea of powerful people parted instinctively, unconsciously acknowledging a predator in their midst. He moved directly to Maya, his hand gently but firmly removing the security guard's grip from her arm. His other hand settled protectively on the small of her back. He felt her trembling. Derek stammered, face cycling through shock and confusion. You're... what? Julian's eyes never left Derek. My fiancée, Maya Sullivan. Senator Vance recovered quickly, years of political training kicking in. Mr. Hart, I don't know what she told you, but this woman is the woman I'm going to marry. Yes, I'm aware. Julian produced his phone, showing a screenshot already trending on social media. The post was from his verified account, posted 4 hours earlier. Some news is too important not to share. Maya Sullivan has made me the happiest man alive by agreeing to become my wife. To privacy, partnership, and the courage to fight for what's right. The accompanying photo showed Maya and Julian at a coffee shop, her laughing, him looking at her like she was the only person in the world. It had been taken weeks ago by his security team, staged as contingency for exactly this moment. 23,000 likes, 8,000 retweets, 12,000 comments. Derek's face reddened. That's impossible. She never mentioned, because we value our privacy, Julian said smoothly. Unlike some people who turn their personal lives into campaign opportunities. The barb hit Senator Vance perfectly. Her jaw tightened. From the side, Tori watched with fascination, still recording. This was getting very interesting. Julian addressed the security guard. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. My fiancée received an invitation from Ms. Turner of the Washington Chronicle. She's here legally. So unless you want to arrest someone for attending an event they were invited to, I suggest you reconsider. The guard looked at Derek, uncertain. Derek opened his mouth to protest, but Senator Vance grabbed his arm tightly. I think we've all had a misunderstanding. Derek, darling, let's not make a scene. She dragged him away, whispering urgently. Tori followed at a distance, still recording, still collecting insurance. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with gossip and speculation. The impossible had happened. Julian Hart, the reclusive billionaire who hadn't attended a public event in 5 years, had just claimed a disgraced prosecutor as his fiancée. Julian turned to Maya, lowering his voice. Walk with me. Smile. We're madly in love. Maya was dazed, still processing. Who are you? Why did you... He noticed her pallor, the way she swayed slightly. Are you all right? You look like you're about to faint. I'm fine, I just need to... Her knees buckled. Julian's arm tightened around her waist, supporting her full weight as if she weighed nothing. We need to leave. Now. He guided her through the crowd, nodding politely at its shocked onlookers. His hand never left her back, possessive and protective in equal measure. Across the room, Paige caught Maya's eye and mouthed, What the hell? Maya could only shake her head. She had no idea. As they reached the exit, Tori Blackwell turned to a colleague with a calculated smile. Well, this just got interesting. Outside, a Rolls-Royce waited. Julian helped Maya inside, the leather seats soft as butter, the interior silent as a tomb. As they pulled away from the hotel, Maya finally found her voice. Who are you really? And what just happened? Julian looked at her, his gray eyes unreadable in the passing streetlights. My name is Julian Hart. I own Hart Defense Systems. I'm worth about $8.7 billion depending on the market. And what just happened is that I saved your life. Maya stared at him. Why? Because I need you, he said simply. And from what I saw tonight, you need me. Then he told her exactly what he knew about her, every detail of her life, her case, her mother, her situation. And when he was finished, he made her an offer that was equal parts salvation and trap. $3.5 million, 8 weeks of pretending, and a chance to bring down Derek Castellano. Maya looked at the contract on his tablet, thinking of her mother, her career, the baby growing inside her that Derek didn't know about. Every instinct screamed not to trust this man. But when her phone buzzed with a news alert about criminal charges being filed against her, and Julian calmly explained that returning to her motel would mean immediate arrest, Maya realized the truth. She wasn't choosing between freedom and a cage. She was choosing which cage to enter. At least this one came with a chance to fight back. Where do I sign? She asked. Julian smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, but for the first time in weeks, Maya felt like she might survive. The Hart penthouse in Tribeca occupied the top 3 floors of a glass and steel tower that pierced the Manhattan skyline like a shard of ice. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered 360-degree views of the city, but the interior felt less like a home than a carefully curated museum exhibition. Every piece of furniture had been chosen by an interior designer who prioritized aesthetic perfection over human comfort. The leather sofas were beautiful but unwelcoming. The art on the walls was expensive but cold. No family photos, no personal mementos, nothing that suggested an actual human being lived here. Maya's guest suite was larger than her entire old apartment had been. The bed alone could have slept 4 people comfortably. The bathroom featured Italian marble and a rainfall shower with enough settings to pilot a spacecraft. On the nightstand, she found a bottle of prenatal vitamins, The expensive kind her clinic doctor had recommended, but she couldn't afford, along with an appointment card for a private OBGYN the following morning. Julian had thought of everything. The realization made her skin crawl. He'd known about the pregnancy before she told him. How long had he been watching her? How much did he know? She barely slept that first night, lying in the enormous bed, one hand protectively on her stomach. Her baby, barely the size of a kidney bean, had no idea their mother had just signed a contract that traded their first months of life for $3.5 million and a chance at justice. "I'm doing this for you," Maya whispered to her flat stomach. "I know it's messy and complicated, but I promise you I'll make it worth it." The next morning, a car arrived precisely at 8 to take her to the medical appointment. Julian was already in the back seat, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her semester's law school tuition, working on his tablet. "You don't have to come," Maya said as she slid in. "Yes, I do. If we're going to sell this engagement, I need to know everything about your health and the baby's development. Besides, committed partners attend prenatal appointments together." The medical office occupied the penthouse of another luxury building, accessible only by private elevator. No waiting room full of other patients. No receptionist making copies of insurance cards. Just a pristine suite that smelled of money and discretion, where privacy was the primary product being sold. Dr. Catherine Reynolds was in her 50s, professional but warm, with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent decades dealing with wealthy patients in their complicated situations. She examined Maya thoroughly, ran blood tests, and performed an ultrasound. "Everything looks good," Dr. Reynolds announced, pointing at the grainy image on the screen. "Baby's measuring right on track for 8 weeks. Heartbeat is strong at 165 beats per minute, but your stress hormones are elevated and you've lost 3 pounds since your last weigh-in. That concerns me." "I've had a stressful few weeks," Maya said, understating it dramatically. Julian leaned forward, his businessman's focus fully engaged. "What does she need, specifically?" Dr. Reynolds looked between them, clearly trying to gauge the relationship dynamic. "Are you the father?" Awkward pause. Maya answered quietly, "No." "But I'm responsible for her well-being during this pregnancy," Julian said smoothly. "What are her requirements?" The doctor provided a detailed list: 8 hours of sleep nightly, regular meals with plenty of protein and vegetables, no caffeine, no alcohol, no high-stress situations, moderate exercise like walking or prenatal yoga, and absolutely no putting herself in dangerous situations. Julian pulled out his phone and made notes like he was planning a military operation. Maya watched him, unsure whether to be grateful or disturbed by his intensity. Back at the penthouse, the transformation began in earnest. An etiquette consultant named Vivian arrived with a 3-ring binder full of protocols. She was 60 years old with silver hair, pulled into a severe bun, and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades teaching diplomats how to navigate state dinners. "When you meet Mr. Hart's business associates," Vivian instructed, "you smile warmly, make eye contact, offer a firm but brief handshake, and let Mr. Hart guide the conversation. Your role is to be supportive, charming, and utterly devoted." Maya felt her jaw clench. "I'm a federal prosecutor. I've argued before the Supreme Court. I've cross-examined senators and CEOs. I don't need lessons in how to smile." "You need to look like you belong in Mr. Hart's world," Julian said from where he'd been observing by the doorway. "That's what I'm paying for." "I'm pregnant, not incompetent." "No one said you were incompetent," he replied evenly. "But there's a difference between courtroom confidence and social grace at a charity gala. Different skills, different context. You just hired someone to teach me how to stand and when to speak. That's treating me like a performing doll." Julian's expression hardened slightly. "I'm teaching you how to survive in a world that will judge you instantly and mercilessly. These people are sharks. They'll smell insecurity and circle. I'm giving you armor." Maya wanted to argue further, but part of her knew he was right. The legal world and the billionaire social circuit operated on different rules. She'd need to learn fast. The wardrobe session was even more surreal. A designer boutique brought an entire collection to the penthouse. Racks of Chanel, Dior, Valentino, and other names Maya had only seen in magazines. The stylist, a reed-thin man named Marco, assessed her figure with a professional eye. "We'll need empire waists and A-line cuts to accommodate the pregnancy," Marco said, already pulling pieces. "The baby will start showing properly in another 4 to 6 weeks. We'll plan a maternity wardrobe that maintains elegance while celebrating the pregnancy. Mr. Hart has authorized an unlimited budget." "These won't fit in a few weeks," Maya protested, touching a beautiful silk gown. "We'll adjust as needed," Marco assured her, "and we'll add new pieces monthly. A pregnant woman should feel beautiful, not frumpy." Julian appeared with 2 shopping bags. "I had these delivered." Inside were comfortable flats in various styles, cashmere loungewear, and a collection of maternity basics from high-end brands. "You're carrying a child. You need to be comfortable, healthy, and feel confident. The dress-up clothes are for public. These are for private." The gesture surprised Maya. It was thoughtful in a way that contradicted the cold businessman persona. She didn't know how to respond. The hardest part was the cover story rehearsal. Late at night, after a day of consultations and fittings, Julian quizzed her in his office like she was a witness he was prepping for trial. "Where did we meet?" "Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala, 6 months ago." "What were you doing there?" "Attending as a guest of the museum's architecture curator." "You were a donor." "We started talking about the postmodern wing expansion." "What did I say that impressed you?" "You challenged the curator's assumptions about the design. You argued that beauty without structural integrity is just decoration." "I said that sounded like a philosophy for life, not just buildings." "You laughed. It was the first time I'd heard you laugh." Julian paused, looking at her. "That's actually good, more specific than the script I wrote. I'm a lawyer. I know how to build a believable narrative." "When did you tell me about the pregnancy?" Maya hesitated. "Wait, that's part of the story?" "It has to be. People will notice within weeks. We tell them you're 12 weeks along, that we've been keeping it private until after the first trimester. Standard practice for many couples." "So I'm supposed to lie and say you're the father?" "Unless you want to explain that Derek Castellano is the biological father of a child he knows nothing about, yes." Maya's hand went protectively to her stomach. "He can't know. If he finds out I'm pregnant with his baby, he won't. That's why we control the narrative completely. You're 12 weeks pregnant with my child. We've been quietly dating for 6 months. We kept it private because of my public profile and your legal troubles. The engagement happened recently. Simple, believable, consistent. What if someone from my past contradicts the timeline? No one will. Your only remaining friend is Paige, who's been briefed and will support the story. Everyone else from your old life has either abandoned you or been scared off by Derek's campaign. We've effectively isolated you, which ironically makes the lie easier to maintain." The clinical way he described her isolation stung, but it was true. Maya had no one left except Paige, and now Julian, though she wasn't sure if he counted as an ally or a captor. One night, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, Maya wandered through the dark penthouse. She found Julian in the living room, illuminated only by city lights streaming through the windows. He sat before a chessboard, playing both sides, moving pieces with methodical precision. "You play?" she asked softly. Julian didn't look up. "My foster father taught me. Said it was the only way I'd learn to think 3 moves ahead. In his house, if you couldn't anticipate consequences, you didn't survive." "You were in foster care?" Maya moved closer, settling into a chair across from him. Her hand rested naturally on her barely there bump, a gesture that was becoming habitual. "Aged 8 to 18, 7 different homes. Some were just overwhelmed families doing their best. Others, he moved at night, capturing a pawn. Others saw foster kids as free labor or income sources. The last family kept me because I could fix their computers and didn't eat much. I was useful but invisible. Perfect combination." Maya thought of her own childhood, raised by loving parents despite financial struggles. Her father reading her bedtime stories about heroes who fought for justice. Her mother teaching her that kindness cost nothing but meant everything. She'd been poor but rich in the ways that mattered most. "My father used to say the system fails kids when it treats them like problems to solve instead of people to protect," Maya said softly. Julian's hand froze over a chess piece. For the first time since they'd met, She saw genuine emotion flicker across his carefully controlled face. Pain, recognition, something vulnerable. Your father sounds like he was a good man. He was. He also died broken alone because he refused to compromise his principles. He was investigating corruption in our town, getting close to exposing some powerful people. They killed him and made it look like a botched robbery. I'm not sure what that says about being good. It says he had something more valuable than money or safety. He had integrity, and he had a daughter who inherited that integrity, who fights just like him, even when she's facing impossible odds, even while pregnant and essentially homeless. Their eyes met across the chessboard. In the dim light, with his defenses lowered by the late hour, Julian looked younger, less intimidating, more human. Maya felt something shift between them, an understanding that transcended their transactional arrangement. I'm scared, Maya admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. Not just of Derek or the legal troubles. I'm scared of being a mother, of bringing a baby into this mess, of failing them before they're even born. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Julian said, his voice low and intense. You're standing up to criminals while pregnant and homeless. You're fighting for justice when everyone has abandoned you. That's not weakness. That's extraordinary courage. I'm living in your penthouse under a fake engagement, being paid millions to pretend. That's not heroic. That's survival prostitution with a better furniture. You're surviving. That's always the first step to winning. My foster father used to say that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to die. Refuse to give up. Keep breathing until you can fight it back. That's what you're doing. After she left, returning to her enormous empty bedroom, Julian remained at the chessboard. He picked up the queen piece, the most powerful piece on the board, and held it without moving it. Just held it, feeling its weight, thinking about a pregnant federal prosecutor who'd somehow cracked the fortress walls he'd spent 20 years building. He was supposed to see her as an asset, a useful tool in his corporate war against Meridian Capital and Derek Castellano. But sitting across from her tonight, watching her hand curve protectively over her small bump while discussing her fears, he'd felt something dangerous. He'd felt hope. And hope, he knew from bitter experience, was the emotion that destroyed you fastest. Their first public appearance came 5 days into the arrangement. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was hosting a private donor event, black tie only, for major contributors. Maya wore an emerald green silk gown that Marco had selected, empire waist elegantly accommodating her growing belly while still maintaining clean lines. Her hair was swept up, diamond earrings borrowed from Julian's vault glittered at her ears, and professional makeup made her look healthy despite her recent ordeals. When she emerged from her room, Julian stopped mid-sentence in his conversation with Will. He stared. You look... He seemed to search for words, his usual eloquence failing. Like I cost $3.5 million, Maya supplied dryly. I was going to say radiant. Pregnancy suits you. Maya tucked her stomach self-consciously. I'm not even showing yet. Not really. I didn't mean physically. Julian's voice was softer than she'd heard before. You look determined, fierce, like you're ready to fight. They entered the museum together, and immediately the camera flashes started. Gossip had been swirling since the gala incident. Everyone wanted to see Julian Hart's mysterious fiancée, the woman who transformed overnight from disgraced prosecutor to billionaire's bride. Within 10 minutes, they were approached by Richard Bradford, chief investor at Meridian Capital, the hedge fund attempting to take over Hart Defense Systems. He was 50-something, silver-haired, with the confidence of old money. Hart, you must introduce me to your lovely fiancée. Julian made the introduction smoothly. Maya shook Bradford's hand with exactly the right amount of pressure, maintained eye contact, and smiled warmly. Then she said, Mr. Bradford, the hedge fund trying to steal Julian's company through predatory stock manipulation and hostile takeover tactics disguised as corporate restructuring. Yes, I've heard so much about you. The silence was deafening. Bradford's face cycled through shock, outrage, and finally grudging respect. Julian coughed to hide his laugh. That's not exactly how we'd characterize our interest in Hart Defense Systems, Bradford managed. Of course not, Maya replied smoothly. But as a former federal prosecutor, I tend to call things what they are. Julian tells me you're concerned about his leadership stability. Let me assure you, he's the most stable, strategic, and brilliant businessman I've ever met, sometimes to a fault. He thinks 5 moves ahead in every situation. She squeezed Julian's arm, smiled up at him with practiced adoration. Though between us, I'm working on getting him to occasionally make impulsive decisions, especially with the baby coming. Children don't exactly fit into strategic 5-year plans. Bradford's eyes widened. Baby, you're 12 weeks, Julian confirmed smoothly, his hand moving to rest lightly on Maya's back. We wanted to keep it private a bit longer, but yes, Maya's expecting. Another reason I've been so focused on ensuring heart defense systems remains independent and thriving. I want to build something lasting for my family. The word family hung in the air. Bradford's entire demeanor shifted. A billionaire settling down, starting a family, that was stability. That was long-term thinking. That was exactly what the board wanted to see. Within an hour, Maya had charmed half the room. She discussed urban architecture with museum curators, monetary policy with economists, and even made a senator laugh with a self-deprecating joke about courtroom disasters. She was brilliant, natural, and utterly convincing. Julian watched her work the room, realizing something unsettling. She wasn't pretending to be smart and capable. She was smart and capable. The only thing she was pretending was that she was his. On the museum balcony, they had a moment alone. City lights spread below them like fallen stars. Maya looked out at Manhattan, one hand unconsciously resting on her stomach. "This isn't as terrible as I thought it would be," she said quietly. "The event or the arrangement? Both. These people are less intimidating when you realize they're just humans in expensive clothes. Same insecurities, same fears, just better jewelry." Julian's hand found her waist. For the cameras potentially watching from inside, he told himself. But when he leaned in slightly and she didn't pull away, it became impossible to tell where performance ended and reality began. She smelled like vanilla and something floral. Her skin was warm even in the cool evening air. "Maya," he started, not sure what he wanted to say. A camera flash from inside broke the moment. Someone had been photographing them through the glass. "We should return," Julian said, stepping back, rebuilding his walls. "They'll notice if we're gone too long." Right, the performance. But Maya's voice held a note of something like disappointment. As they walked back inside, neither could shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, that the lines they'd drawn so carefully were already beginning to blur. The evening took a dark turn when Tori Blackwell appeared. She'd crashed the event, using her executive assistant credentials to talk her way past security, sent by Derek to observe and report back. She approached Maya at the champagne table with predatory grace. "Maya Sullivan," Tori said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Congratulations on your engagement. And the baby. How unexpected." Maya's guard went up instantly. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "Tori Blackwell. I work with Derek at Castellano Industries. Executive assistant. I handle all his important affairs." The emphasis on affairs was deliberate. Maya recognized the name from her investigation files. Tori Blackwell, law school dropout, had been with Castellano Industries for 3 years. Smart, ambitious, morally flexible. Maya had suspected she was more than just Derek's assistant, but couldn't prove it. "Right. You were at the gala the other night. Quite a scene." "It was. Derek was devastated by your accusations. He's such a sensitive soul." Tori's eyes dropped to Maya's stomach, calculating. 12 weeks, you said? Congratulations. Though the timing is interesting. Weren't you and Derek engaged until 4 months ago? Let's see, that would make the conception right around the time of your breakup, maybe even before. Funny how these things work out. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Tori had done the math and reached the obvious conclusion. The baby was Derek's. Maya kept her voice steady. "I don't see how my pregnancy timeline is any of your business, Mrs. Blackwell." "Oh, it's not at all." Tori smiled wider, showing too many teeth. "I'm just good with numbers. It's why Derek values me so much. I keep track of all his important dates, all his significant relationships. I maintain very detailed records. You'd be surprised what I know. Julian appeared beside Maya, his presence immediately shifting the power dynamic. Ms. Blackwell, I didn't realize Castellano Industries was invited to tonight's event. Mr. Hart, Tori's smile faltered slightly, facing the full force of Julian's attention. Just paying my respects to the happy couple. Derek sends his regards. He's very interested in your upcoming nuptials. Very interested in the baby, too. I'm sure we'll all be seeing much more of each other soon. She walked away, leaving Maya shaken. Julian's jaw tightened. She knows, Maya said quietly. Knows what? That the baby is Derek's. She did the math, and she just threatened to tell him. Then we need to move faster than I thought. If Derek finds out you're pregnant with his child, he'll fight for custody. He'll use it as leverage. Maya's hand pressed protectively against her stomach. I won't let him near my baby. I won't. He won't get near you or the baby. I promise. Julian's voice was hard as steel. In the limo afterward, Maya was quiet, processing the evening's success and its complication. That went well, except for Tori. They believed us. Bradford is already backing off the hostile takeover. 3 board members told me tonight they're firmly in my camp now. The engagement is working. Then maybe this will actually work. 8 weeks. We can do 8 weeks. Julian looked out the window at passing city lights. Maybe. But his expression suggested he knew something she didn't. That 8 weeks was a fantasy. That Tori Blackwell's threat meant everything was about to accelerate, and that neither of them was prepared for what came next. In the privacy of her room that night, Maya looked at herself in the mirror. Diamond earrings she'd return tomorrow. Borrowed designer gown. Ring on her finger that meant nothing and everything. Hand on her stomach where a baby grew, unaware their mother had just stepped onto a stage where one wrong move could destroy everything. I'm trying, she whispered to her reflection, to her baby, to her father's memory. I'm trying to do the right thing the wrong way. I hope that's enough. In his own room, Julian sat on his bed, still in his tuxedo, looking at security footage from tonight, frame after frame of him and Maya, her laughing at something a curator said, him watching her with undisguised admiration, both of them on the balcony, that moment before the camera flash when it looked like he might kiss her. He was supposed to see an asset, a useful tool in his corporate chess game. But the man in these photos was looking at Maya Sullivan like she was the only real thing in a room full of expensive illusions. This is a problem, he said aloud to his empty room. This is a serious problem. Because falling for the woman you'd hired to be your fake fiancée, the pregnant prosecutor carrying another man's child, who you'd manipulated into dependence for purely strategic reasons. That wasn't in any contract. That wasn't part of any plan. And Julian Alexander Hart didn't know how to win a game when his own heart had turned traitor. The call shattered the fragile peace at 2:17 in the morning. Maya's phone buzzed on the nightstand, the generic ringtone jarring her from restless sleep. She grabbed it, heart already racing, knowing that calls at this hour only brought bad news. Miss Sullivan? The nurse's voice was professionally calm, which somehow made it worse. This is Mercy Medical Center. Your mother has suffered a stroke. She's stable for now, but she's asking for you. I think you should come. Maya was out of bed before the nurse finished speaking, throwing on clothes with shaking hands. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She ran out of her bedroom and nearly collided with Julian in the hallway. He was still fully dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, having clearly been working in his office despite the hour. What happened? He asked, reading her panic instantly. My mother. Stroke. I have to go to the hospital right now. Was Julian's expression shifted to something she'd learned to recognize as his problem-solving mode. The criminal charges Derek filed. If you leave this building, if you're spotted anywhere in public, they could arrest you on sight. He's got people watching for you. I don't care. Maya's voice broke. She's dying. She's asking for me. I'm not letting my mother die alone because I'm hiding from false charges. For a long moment, Julian stared at her. Maya saw something war across his face, calculations being made and discarded, the ruthless businessman fighting against something more human. Then he made a decision that surprised them both. Get dressed properly. Warm coat. We're going together. He was already pulling out his phone, dialing. And I'm buying the hospital. What? I can't stop Derek from having you arrested if the police spot you. But I can make sure you reach your mother first. And I can ensure the hospital administration doesn't cooperate with any attempts to remove you from the premises. He was talking rapidly into his phone now. Marcus, I need you to wake up the acquisitions team. Now we're purchasing Mercy Medical Center. I don't care that it's 2 in the morning. I don't care what it costs. Have the paperwork ready to file within 2 hours. Hart Medical Holdings will own controlling interest before sunrise. Maya stared at him, tears streaming down her face, unsure whether to be grateful or horrified at the casual way he could simply buy an entire hospital to solve a problem. The Rolls-Royce moved through empty Manhattan streets with the chauffeur driving carefully but quickly. Maya sat rigid in the back seat, one hand on her stomach, the other clenched in a fist so tight her nails dug into her palm. Julian made call after call, his legal team working at emergency speed to structure the acquisition. At Mercy Medical Center, security initially tried to stop them at the entrance. A large guard in a gray uniform stepped forward, hand raised. Ms. Sullivan, I have orders from administration. Mr. Derek Castellano, who represents the Castellano Foundation, our largest donor, has requested that you not be permitted. Julian cut him off, his voice cold as winter steel. Check your email, right now. The guard, confused, pulled out his phone. His face went pale as he read. Mr. Castellano no longer makes decisions for this facility, Julian said with devastating calm. As of 40 minutes ago, Hart Medical Holdings owns 51% of this hospital. I make the decisions now. Ms. Sullivan is going to see her mother. You will not stop her. You will not call anyone. You will not mention she was here. Are we clear? The guard stepped aside. They took the elevator to the hospice wing in silence. Maya was trembling, exhausted and terrified, and grateful all at once. Julian's hand rested lightly on her lower back, a gesture of support that felt genuine rather than performative. Sarah Sullivan's room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of medical monitors. The woman in the bed looked impossibly small, her body ravaged by months of cancer. But her eyes were open, clear, and they lit up when Maya rushed in. There's my girl, Sarah whispered, her voice weak but warm. Mom, I'm here. I'm here. Maya took her mother's hand, careful of the IV, and let the tears flow freely. I heard what happened, the news. They're saying terrible things about you. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. I'm just glad I could get here. Sarah's eyes, still sharp despite her body's betrayal, moved to Maya's stomach. Even through the loose sweater, the small bump was becoming visible to someone who knew to look. Baby, Sarah breathed. Are you? Maya nodded, unable to speak through her tears. 8 weeks. I was going to tell you. I wanted to wait until things were more stable, but nothing's been stable, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Shh, no apologies. Sarah's smile was radiant despite her weakness. Thomas would have been so excited, a grandchild. He always said you'd be a wonderful mother. Dad would have been disappointed in me. Look at this mess I'm in. Your father would be so proud of you, Sarah said firmly, using what little strength she had left to squeeze Maya's hand. You're fighting for what's right, just like he did. The truth doesn't change just because people try to bury it. You keep digging, baby girl. You keep digging. And look where it gotten him, where it's gotten me. I'm about to have a baby and I don't even have a real home. I'm living on charity and lies and you're surviving. That's the first step and you're going to give my grandchild a better world. I know it. I know you, Maya. You don't quit. You never quit. Sarah's gaze shifted to Julian, who'd been standing quietly in the doorway, giving them privacy. Is that him? The man from the news? Yes, Julian, this is my mother. Mom, this is Julian Hart. Sarah studied him with the unflinching assessment only a dying mother could give. You love my daughter? Julian stepped forward, and Maya saw something flicker across his face. When he spoke, his voice held a note she'd never heard before. Something raw and honest. Yes, I do. It was the first time he'd said it, even as part of their act. But in this moment, in this hospital room with a dying woman who deserved truth, it didn't sound like an act at all. Good, Sarah said, satisfied, because she's easy to love and hard to keep safe. She gets that from her father. All that courage, all that stubborn nobility, it'll get her killed if someone doesn't watch her back. Take care of them both. Promise me. I will. I promise. And Julian meant it. Sarah nodded, her eyes drifting closed. That's good. That's real good. The monitor's beeping, which had been steady, began to slow, then became irregular, then began the terrible decline that medical professionals know too well. Mom? Maya's voice rose in panic. Mom. Nurses rushed in. Code blue. The organized chaos of a medical team fighting death. Maya was gently moved aside by a doctor, Julian's arms catching her as she stumbled back, holding her upright as they worked. 10 minutes of desperate effort. Medications pushed, chest compressions, the mechanical rhythm of professionals who'd done this 1,000 times. But Sarah Sullivan was ready to go. Her body had fought long enough. I'm sorry, the doctor said gently, turning off the monitor. She's gone. The sound that came from Maya was something between a sob and a wail, pure grief made audible. She collapsed against Julian, who caught her weight, held her upright, one hand protectively curved over her stomach, where Sarah's grandchild continued to grow, unaware they'd just lost the grandmother who would have adored them. I'm so sorry, Julian said quietly, holding her as she shook with sobs. I'm so sorry. She thought you loved me, Maya gasped between the tears. She died thinking I'd found someone who actually cared. But this is all just Maya. Julian wanted to tell her something, wanted to say that maybe it wasn't all fake anymore, but the words caught in his throat. Please don't tell me this is all business or right now. Just let me pretend for a minute. Let me believe someone actually gives a damn. So Julian held her tighter and said nothing, because the truth was too complicated and the lies were too ingrained. And a woman had just died believing her daughter would be okay. They stayed at the hospital for 3 more hours, handling the paperwork that death requires, making arrangements Maya couldn't afford until Julian quietly handed his credit card to the funeral home director. Maya was too numb to protest. At 8 in the morning, they returned to the penthouse. Maya was hollow, moving like a ghost. Julian tried to get her to eat something, but she just took the water he offered and went out to the balcony, sitting in the cold October air in just the sweater she'd worn to the hospital. Julian let her sit for an hour before his phone started buzzing insistently. Will calling. Julian stepped inside to take it. Not now, Will. You need to see this, right fucking now, Julian pulled up the news on his tablet. Every channel carried the same story, the same devastating headline. Breaking. Federal charges filed against disgraced attorney Maya Sullivan. Embezzlement, wire fraud, and criminal conspiracy. Alleged theft of over $200,000 from client trust accounts. Julian's blood went cold as he read the details. It was a masterwork of fabrication. Bank transfers that appeared legitimate, forged documents with signatures that looked genuine, 3 former colleagues providing sworn testimony. All of it lies, but professionally constructed lies that would hold up under initial scrutiny. The news anchor continued, voice sympathetic but damning. According to documents filed this morning, Sullivan allegedly embezzled over $200,000 from client trust accounts during her time at Morrison and Price. The firm has released a statement expressing shock and cooperating fully with federal authorities. Then Derek appeared on screen, playing the role of concerned ex-colleague perfectly. I tried to help Maya, we all did, but she's been spiraling for months. The delusions, the paranoia, the refusal to accept responsibility. And now to find out she's been stealing from clients? Frankly, I'm concerned for the child's safety. I hope child services are involved. Maya appeared in the doorway. She'd heard everything. Her hand rested protectively on her stomach, her face ashen. You should end the engagement, she said, her voice hollow and distant. Publicly. Tonight. Distance yourself. Save your company. No, Julian, I'm toxic. Everything I touch turns to poison. First my career, then my mother, now you. Derek's right about one thing. I am spiraling. Maybe I am crazy. Stop it. You're not crazy. You're being systematically destroyed by a criminal who's better at playing victim than you are at playing defense. They're coming after my baby now, Maya said, her voice breaking. Did you hear what he said? Child services. He's planting seeds that I'm unfit. If I stay with you, it makes it worse. Your board will turn on you. The merger will fail. Derek wins everything and still gets to take my baby. If you leave me, you have no protection, no resources, no way to fight him. You'll be arrested within 24 hours. Where does that leave the baby? Being born in a county jail. Maya's voice turned bitter, defensive. So I'm still just an asset to you. A chess piece you can't afford to lose because it damages your position on the board. The words hurt more than she'd expected them to, because over the past 2 weeks, part of her had started to believe he actually cared, that the tender moments were real, that his promise to her dying mother had meant something. Julian's expression hardened, his own defensive walls slamming back into place. If that's what you want to think, what else should I think? My mother just died believing you loved me. She died believing I'd found someone who would protect me and my baby. But this is all just business to you, isn't it? Just another transaction. Yes, Julian said, his voice cold. At the end, then, that's exactly what this is. But neither of them sounded convincing anymore. The lie was wearing thin, and they both knew it. Maya turned away, unable to look at him. I need to be alone. She retreated to her room and Julian let her go, standing in his empty living room, surrounded by his expensive furniture and his expensive view, feeling hollower than he'd felt in years. The final catastrophe came that afternoon. Maya, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, wandered the penthouse like a ghost. Her mother was dead. She was facing federal charges. Her baby would be born into chaos. And the one person she'd started to trust had just confirmed it was all a cold business arrangement. She found herself in Julian's office, not deliberately snooping, but just walking, trying to escape the prison of her own thoughts. On his desk sat a file folder, her name typed neatly on the tab. It was open, as if he'd been reviewing it recently. Maya knew she shouldn't look, knew it would violate their arrangement, their tentative trust. But grief and anger and desperation made her reckless. She opened the file. The first pages were standard. Her background, education, career. But then came the detailed psychological profile, noting trauma response patterns consistent with PTSD from father's death, trust issues, pathological need to prove self-worth through achievement, likely to reject direct assistance due to pride, requires manipulation of circumstances to accept help. Maya's hands started to shake. Her therapy transcripts were there, sessions she'd had after her father was killed, raw admissions of grief and guilt and fear that she'd never intended anyone else to see. Medical records from the clinic. Detailed notes. Subject discovered pregnancy 6 weeks ago. Initial visit was 3 weeks prior to contract signing. Father confirmed as Derek Castellano through surveillance documentation. Subject has not informed father. This creates leverage opportunity. Surveillance photos. Maya at her mother's hospice, at the motel, at the clinic getting the pregnancy test, at the bar where she'd been waitressing to make rent. All taken weeks before the gala. He'd been watching her for weeks. But what made her feel physically sick were Julian's handwritten notes in the margin. Perfect candidate, desperate enough to comply, smart enough to be useful, but not so connected she has alternatives. Pregnancy adds complication, but also control. She cannot risk losing medical support. Mother's terminal illness provides additional pressure point. Recommended approach. Rescue scenario, provide medical care, create dependency. The child becomes additional leverage for compliance. Maya sat down hard in Julian's desk chair, the folder trembling in her hands. She felt violated, used, dirty. Every kind word, every tender moment, every time he'd seemed to genuinely care had been calculated manipulation. She was a file folder, a psychological profile, a leverage opportunity, and her baby, the child growing inside her, had been categorized as additional leverage. You weren't supposed to see that. Will stood in the doorway, not Julian. Will. His face was regretful but not surprised. He knew, Maya said, her voice shaking. Before the gala, he knew I was pregnant. He knew everything. Yes. How long have you known? Since the beginning. Julian doesn't do anything without comprehensive research and detailed planning, including rescue operations. The hospital purchase? Making sure I got to see my mother before she died? That was all strategy. Will's voice was gentle but honest. A pregnant woman whose mother dies alone while she's in his custody. Bad press. Could undermine the engagement story. Better to appear compassionate, to be the supportive partner helping her through tragedy. It plays better with the board, better with the media. Maya laughed, a broken sound. He bought out an entire hospital to protect his investment, not to help me, to protect his image. Julian is complicated. He genuinely wants to keep you safe, but he doesn't know how to do that without controlling everything. It's how he survived foster care, how he built his empire. Control equals safety in his worldview. My baby isn't leverage, Maya whispered, hand protectively over her stomach. My baby is a human being, a child who deserves parents who see them as a blessing, not a bargaining chip. I know, Will said quietly. For what it's worth, I think he's making a mistake. Not in protecting you, but in not telling you the truth about why he's so desperate to keep you safe. Julian spent his whole life protecting himself by controlling others. He doesn't know how to let anyone in, so he manipulates them instead. The door opened. Julian entered, fresh from a shower, his hair still damp, wearing casual clothes. He froze when he saw Maya sitting at his desk, the file open in front of her. You knew I was pregnant before the gala, Maya said, her voice shaking with rage and hurt. You had me followed to the clinic. You documented my pregnancy like it was a business opportunity. Julian's face went carefully blank. I documented everything. That's what I do. You wrote that my baby, my child, was additional leverage, like they're a bargaining chip in your corporate game. I was assessing the situation, identifying factors that would influence your decision-making. I'm not a situation. Maya stood, the folder falling to the desk. I'm a person, a human being, and I'm carrying a child, another human being, who you're treating like a line item in a contract. Julian's voice hardened, his own defenses rising. I'm treating you like someone who needs protection, someone who was about to be destroyed and has no one else to turn to. I'm offering you safety. By calculating exactly how desperate I'd have to be before I'd accept. By using my mother's terminal illness as a pressure point. By seeing my pregnancy as a control mechanism. Would you have accepted help any other way? Julian shot back. Would you have trusted me if I just offered assistance out of kindness? You're too proud, too independent, too convinced that accepting help is weakness. I had to create a scenario where you'd have no choice but to let me protect you. Maya realized with sick certainty that he was right. She wouldn't have trusted simple kindness. She would have seen it as manipulation, which meant he'd manipulated her by being honest about the manipulation. The logic made her head hurt. So you manipulated me instead, used my vulnerabilities against me. I gave you options. You chose. I chose because I had no choice. That's not freedom, Julian. That's just a prettier cage. It's survival. Julian's voice rose, rare emotion breaking through his control. I kept you alive. I kept your mother comfortable in her final weeks. I'm making sure your baby has medical care. I'm protecting you from a man who has killed pregnant women before. What else do you want from me? The truth, basic human respect, some acknowledgement that we're people, not chess pieces. Maya's hand pressed against her stomach. My baby isn't leverage. Say it right now. Say my baby is a human being, not a tool for your corporate war. Julian's jaw worked. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then coldly, your baby is Derek Castellano's biological child, the child of a criminal. Without my protection, that child will be born in a county jail to a mother serving time for crimes she didn't commit, and the father will sue for custody the moment he learns of the child's existence. I'm offering that child protection, health care, legitimacy, and a future. What else do you want from me? The words hung in the air like poison. Maya physically recoiled as if he'd slapped her. I want you to see us as people, not chess pieces, not leverage, not investments. People. Human beings who deserve basic dignity. Something broke in Julian's expression. I don't know how to do that. The admission was so raw, so honest, that it stunned them both into silence. "Then I can't stay here," Maya said quietly. "My baby deserves better than this, better than being leverage in someone's game." She started to leave, started to pack, hand protectively on her stomach. Julian tried to stop her, but she brushed past him. He'd said it himself. Her baby was leverage. That was all they were to them. "We'll block the door. You can't leave. Watch me. If you leave, you both die, you and the baby." Maya froze. "What?" Will pulled out his own file, the one Julian should have shown her from the beginning. "3 whistleblowers before you tried to expose Castellano Industries." He showed her the evidence. Catherine Morrison, 32, pregnant with her first child. Car accident. Brake lines cut. Both she and the baby died. Daniel Carter, 45, father of 3, fell from his balcony. Rebecca Torres, 28, 8 weeks pregnant, just like Maya. Opioid overdose, except she'd been sober for 6 years and was planning the nursery. Derek targets vulnerable people, people with something to lose, something to protect. Will's voice was gentle but firm. "Julian's security team has been following you 24/7 for 6 weeks. They've intercepted 2 attempts to access your motel room. Someone tried to hack your phone. Last week, they found a tracker placed on Paige Turner's car." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Will looked at Julian, who stood frozen, his careful control shattered. "Because he thought if you knew how much danger you were in, you'd run. And he can't protect you if you run." Maya turned to Julian. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if you knew, you'd run," Julian said. Ewan said, his voice raw. "And I can't protect you if you run. I can't save you if you won't let me. So you let me think I was just leverage to you? Better to let you think I'm a heartless bastard using you or my corporate games than to terrify you with the truth." "What truth?" And finally, Julian's walls came down. He told her about Emma, his foster sister, just 14 years old when she'd gotten pregnant after being assaulted by their foster father's adult son. She'd tried to do the right thing, tried to report it, tried to protect her baby. The system destroyed her for it, labeled her unstable, separated her from Julian, sent her to a group home 3 states away where no one cared if she lived or died. She killed herself 6 months later, Julian said, his voice breaking. 17 years old, pregnant, alone. Because she tried to do the right thing, and the people who should have protected her failed her. Both she and her baby died. Maya's anger drained away, replaced by horror and grief. "I couldn't save her," Julian continued. "I was 16, powerless, trapped in the same system. I swore I'd never be that powerless again. I'd never let someone I cared about be destroyed by people with more power, especially not someone pregnant and alone. So you built an empire. So I became the person with the most power. But power doesn't teach you how to let people in. It teaches you how to control them. Because if you control them, they can't leave. And if they can't leave, they can't die." He finally looked directly at Maya. "When I saw you at that gala, pregnant, alone, about to be destroyed by a man who's killed pregnant women before, I saw Emma. Someone fighting for what's right. Someone the system was about to destroy. And I thought, not again. Not this time, not another pregnant woman. Not another child. So you orchestrated the rescue. I couldn't save her, but I could save you. Even if it meant manipulating you. Even if I had to write down that your baby was leveraged just to keep myself from caring too much. Why would you need to keep yourself from caring? Because everyone I've cared about has either betrayed me or died. I'm good at a lot of things, Maya. Caring without controlling, protecting without manipulating. I don't know how." Long silence. Maya processed everything. The danger, the manipulation, the twisted protection, the trauma driving it all. That file, those words about my baby being leverage, were me trying to convince myself this was just business, that I wasn't already falling for a pregnant prosecutor who fights for justice even when it costs her everything, and terrified of what that meant. Maya wiped away tears. "I should still leave." "You should, but you won't." "Why not?" "Because you're like Emma, like me. You don't know how to quit fighting. And you know if you walk out that door, Derek wins. All those people he's hurt go unavenged. and your child grows up in a world where men like him face no consequences. He was right. Maya hated that he was right. Then prove it. No more secrets. No more treating me and my baby like chess pieces. Real partners. For both our sakes. Julian handed her his unlocked phone. All my files, all my plans, everything I know about Derek, Meridian Capital, Senator Vance, Tory Blackwell. It's yours. Read it all. Then decide if you still want to work with me. Maya took the phone. This is a lot of trust. It's terrifying, but apparently you make me do terrifying things. For the first time in hours, Maya almost smiled. They shook hands, and it felt different, real. Like they were finally equals. So what's our next move? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo attached. Page bound and gagged in what looked like a warehouse. The message read, "The engagement ends tonight or your friend dies, and then we come for the baby. Come alone to the Castellano Industries warehouse at midnight. Tell Hart, and she's dead. You have 2 hours." Maya showed Julian, hand instinctively protectively on her stomach. It's a trap, Julian said. Of course it's a trap. But Paige is my only real friend, and Derek's threatening my baby. Julian corrected firmly, we face this. You said partners. That means you don't go into danger alone, especially not while pregnant. For the first time since her mother's death, Maya felt something like hope. Good thing I've never been good at following instructions. Julian almost smiled. No, you really haven't. Let's go win this. They had exactly 4 hours to turn Derek Castellano's trap into a snare that would catch him instead. In Julian's penthouse war room, a converted guest bedroom now filled with computer equipment and tactical displays, they gathered around a conference table covered in laptops, building schematics, and legal files. Will pulled up detailed blueprints of the Castellano Industries warehouse on 3 large monitors. 6 exits, Will said, highlighting them in red. Security cameras every 20 feet, all connected to a central monitoring system. Motion sensors on all the doors. If Maya walks in there unprepared, Derek will have everything on video. He'll control the narrative completely. Maya studied the layout, her prosecutor's mind already working through scenarios. Good. Let him record everything. Julian raised an eyebrow. Explain your thinking. Derek wants me to look unstable, dangerous, obsessed. A pregnant woman facing federal charges, breaking into a warehouse to confront her ex. It paints me as unfit, mentally unstable, potentially violent. If Paige is hurt when I get there, or worse, if something happens to her, he can claim I did it, that I'm having a complete breakdown. It destroys any remaining credibility I have and gives him legal grounds to pursue custody of my baby when he inevitably finds out it's his. Wait, Will interjected. He knows the baby is his? His assistant Tori figured it out at the museum gala. She's smart. She did the math. If she told Derek, and I have to assume she did, then this isn't just about silencing me as a witness. This is about controlling the child. If he can prove I'm an unfit mother, mentally unstable and dangerous, he can petition for emergency custody the moment the baby's born. And a child gives him permanent leverage over me. Julian's jaw tightened. Over my dead body. That might literally be part of his plan, Maya said grimly. Think about it. Pregnant whistleblower has violent breakdown, dies in confrontation at warehouse. Maybe she attacks Derek. He defends himself, tragic accident. He gets custody of his orphan child, plays the grieving would-be father trying to do right by his late ex's baby. Senator Vance would love that redemption narrative for her campaign. The room fell silent as they all processed the horrifying plausibility. So how do we flip it? Will asked. How do we turn his trap into ours? Maya pulled up her own laptop, accessing files she'd been compiling for 3 years. I've been documenting everything since I first found evidence of the money laundering. Financial records, witness statements, transaction histories, shell company formations, everything. The problem is Derek's people destroyed the chain of custody. I can't authenticate it as admissible evidence because I can't prove where it came from or that it hasn't been tampered with. But if you could prove it's authentic through an independent witness Derek doesn't control, Julian said, seeing where she was going. Exactly. We need someone with credibility, someone who can verify the evidence independently. Paige, Will said. Paige has been investigating Pierrick for 6 months for the Washington Chronicle. She's a legitimate journalist with a reputation for thorough sourcing. But here's what I've been thinking. When I showed her my evidence last month, she said something strange. She said, "This matches what my sources have given me." Not what she'd found independently, what her sources had given her. That's unusual phrasing for a journalist. They usually say their investigation uncovered something, or they developed sources who confirmed something. Julian leaned forward, interested. You think she's more than just a journalist? I think she might be a confidential informant working with the FBI, maybe both. It would explain why she's been so interested in my evidence, why she's pushed so hard to publish despite her editor's concerns, why she's taken risks that most journalists wouldn't. Will looked skeptical. That's a hell of an assumption to bet both your lives on. It's the only assumption that makes sense, Maya countered. Think about it. Derek isn't stupid. He knows that actually killing a Washington Chronicle journalist would bring massive federal attention. Every agency would get involved. It would be the worst possible move for him. But if he can make it look like I did it, if he can paint me as the unstable ex who attacked them both, he eliminates us both as threats and looks like the victim. And gets custody of the baby, Julian finished, his voice hard. So we let him think his plan is working. I show up scared and desperate, exactly what he expects. Meanwhile, you're feeding everything we have to the FBI through Paige's handler, assuming she has one. When Derek confesses everything to his supposed hostage, thinking she's helpless and we're alone, she'll be wearing a wire. We finally get admissible evidence of his confession, caught on FBI surveillance equipment, properly documented chain of custody. Will shook his head slowly, but he was smiling. That's either brilliant or insane. That's law school training and maternal instinct combined, Maya said, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. I'm not letting Derek Castellano anywhere near my child. Not now, not ever. Julian studied her across the table. In the harsh fluorescent light of the war room, she looked tired and grieving and fierce all at once. Her mother had died less than 24 hours ago. She was facing federal charges. She'd just discovered he'd manipulated her from the beginning, and she was planning a counter-operation against a man who'd killed multiple people with less reason to want them dead. She was extraordinary. What do you need from me? Julian asked. Backup positioned outside but not visible. Medical team on standby in case anything goes wrong with the pregnancy or if anyone gets hurt. And a promise. What promise? Maya's hand pressed flat against her stomach, protective and determined. If something happens to me in that warehouse, if Derek manages to kill me despite our planning, promise me you'll protect my baby. Get them away from Derek. Use every resource you have, every lawyer, every dollar. Keep them safe. Raise them to know their grandfather and grandmother were good people who fought for what was right. Don't let Derek Castellano define who they become. The request hit Julian harder than he'd expected. Nothing is going to happen to you. I'm not letting it. Julian, no. His voice was fierce. I already lost Emma and her baby because I was too young and powerless to stop it. I'm not losing you and yours. That's not a promise, Maya. That's a fact. I won't let it happen. Their eyes held across the table. Something passed between them. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or business arrangements, and everything to do with two damaged people who'd somehow found each other in the worst possible circumstances. All right, Will said, breaking the moment. Let's build a trap. Maya, you'll wear a wire too, hidden. We'll have audio redundancy. Julian, you'll be in a surveillance van 2 blocks away with a tactical team. I'll coordinate communications and manage the FBI contact through Paige's handler, assuming we can make contact. They spent the next 3 hours planning every detail. Contingency plans for contingencies, escape routes, signal codes, what Maya should say to keep Derek talking long enough to get a full confession, how to protect the baby if things got physical. At 11:15, Maya changed into dark jeans and a loose sweater that hid both her small baby bump and the wire taped to her sternum. She looked at herself in the mirror, one hand on her stomach. We're going to be okay, she whispered to the baby. Your mom's smarter than Derek thinks. And you've got an entire team protecting you. including a billionaire who's surprisingly good at tactical planning. Julian appeared in the doorway. It's time. They rode to the warehouse district in silence. Rain had started falling, a cold October rain that made the streets slick and the night feel darker. Maya's car, a rental that couldn't be traced to Julian, sat waiting. She'd drive herself to the warehouse, arrive alone as Derek had demanded. Julian walked her to the car. In the rain, away from cameras and witnesses, he caught her hand. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do. For Paige, for my baby, for all the people Derek's hurt. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, say the code word. We'll come in immediately, FBI or not." "What's the code word?" "Emma. Say her name and I'm coming through those doors whether it blows the operation or not." Maya nodded, throat tight. He'd chosen his sister's name. The girl he'd failed to save. A promise and a memorial all at once. "Julian?" "Yeah?" "When this is over, assuming we both survive and Derek goes to prison and my baby is safe and we've fulfilled the contract, I want to have an honest conversation about what this is, what we are, because I don't think I can go back to pretending it's just business anymore." Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Fear, definitely. "Neither can I." "Good, that's settled then. Now let me go stop a murderer." She drove through rain-slicked streets to the warehouse district, hand on her stomach, wire against her skin, prayer in her heart. 2 blocks behind, invisible in the darkness, Julian's surveillance van followed. The Castellano Industries warehouse loomed like a Gothic nightmare, all rusted metal and broken windows. Rain poured down as Maya parked. She sat for a moment, steadying her breathing, preparing herself. Julian's voice came through her hidden earpiece, small and tinny, but reassuring. "I've got you on camera. FBI is notified and moving into position. We'll contacted Paige's handler. She is FB and she's wired. This is a sting. You were right." Maya felt a surge of vindication and relief. "Then let's finish this." She stepped out into the rain, hand protectively on her barely visible bump, and walked toward the warehouse entrance. Behind her, hidden in the darkness, a dozen FBI agents moved into position. In the van, Julian watched her on monitors, every muscle tense. Inside, the warehouse was dim and cavernous, lit by flickering fluorescence that cast sickly yellow light. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating puddles on the concrete floor. The space smelled of rust and abandonment. "Derek!" Maya called out, not hiding the fear in her voice. It wasn't all an act. "I'm here. Where's Paige?" "Right here," Derek's voice echoed from deeper in the building. A spotlight blazed on. Paige sat tied to a chair in the center of an open space, bruised and gagged, her eyes wide. But when those eyes met Maya's, there was a flash of something. Not fear, recognition, readiness. Maya had been right. This was a sting. Derek stepped from the shadows, and Maya's heart sank. He wasn't alone. Senator Patricia Vance stood beside him, perfectly coiffed even at midnight. And Tori Blackwell, Derek's assistant and mistress, smiled coldly from his other side. 3 against 1. Well, technically 3 against 3, if you counted Paige and the baby Maya was carrying. "I have to admit, Maya," Derek said, his voice carrying that patrician arrogance she'd once mistaken for confidence, "I'm impressed you came, especially in your condition." His eyes dropped pointedly to her stomach. He knew. Of course he knew. Tori had told him. "Let her go, Derek," Maya said, playing her part. "Whatever you think I've done, Paige had nothing to do with it." Tori stepped forward, her smile widening. "Oh, Maya, still so naive. You know, when I did the math at the museum gala, I thought I might be wrong. 12 weeks pregnant, you said. But you and Derek broke up 4 months ago. Which means," she paused for effect, "that baby you're carrying, that's Derek's child." Maya's hand went protectively to her stomach. "I don't know what you're—" "Don't lie," Derek cut in, his voice sharp. "The timing is perfect. That's my baby, my child, my heir." Senator Vance added smoothly, "And you're in no condition to raise a child, are you, Maya? A disbarred attorney facing federal charges for embezzlement, breaking into private property, unstable, violent." When the courts see your behavior tonight, when they hear how you've been stalking Derek, threatening him, they'll have no choice but to grant him emergency custody. For the child's safety, of course. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about silencing Maya as a witness. This was about taking her baby, Derek's baby, creating a narrative where he was the concerned father and she was the unfit mother. "You're going to kill me," Maya said, letting her voice shake. It wasn't hard. Part of her was genuinely terrified. "And take my baby." Derek pulled a gun from behind his back. Maya's blood went cold. In her ear, she heard Julian's sharp intake of breath and urgent whispered orders to his team. "You should have taken the hint when Catherine Morrison died," Derek said casually. "Or Daniel Carter, or Rebecca Torres. But you, Sullivans, you never know when to quit. Your father didn't know when to stop, got himself killed, and now you're about to follow in his footsteps." "Because we believe in justice," Maya managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Derek laughed. "Justice? There's no such thing. There's power and there's everyone else. Your father didn't understand that. He died poor and alone with a bullet in his head. And you're about to die in a dirty warehouse, pregnant and disgraced. And your baby will grow up as a Castellano, never knowing you chose principles over survival." He was confessing, getting it all on tape. Maya just needed to keep him talking. "So the money laundering was just the beginning?" she prompted. And Derek, unable to resist demonstrating his brilliance, began to brag. It all came pouring out. 17 shell corporations across 8 countries, $200 million a month laundered for senators, CEOs, organized crime families. Senator Vance's presidential ambitions, how their network would expand to control federal agencies. Tory's role keeping all the records, all the secrets. "We're not criminals, Maya," Derek said with genuine conviction. "We're service providers. We facilitate the movement of capital. We're the circulatory system of power in this country." "And the people you've killed?" Maya asked. "The whistleblowers? That's just business?" "Casualties of progress, acceptable losses. You could have been acceptable too if you just looked the other way. But you had to be noble, just like your father." He raised the gun, pointing it at Maya's chest, not her stomach. He wanted the baby alive for his custody play. In her ear, Julian's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Maya, say the word, we're coming in." But Maya wasn't done yet. She needed the final piece. "So you'll kill me, take my baby, and Senator Vance gets her presidential campaign with you as the devoted family man rehabilitated by fatherhood. Was that the plan?" "It's a good plan," Senator Vance confirmed. "Tragic story of an unstable ex, a man trying to do right by his child, a powerful couple united by family values. Voters love redemption narratives." "And what about when the baby asks about their mother?" Maya asked. "We'll tell them you were sick," Derek said without hesitation. "Mentally ill. That we tried to help, but you were too far gone. They'll thank us for saving them from you." That was it, the final piece of the confession. Full premeditation, motive, and conspiracy. Maya looked at Paige, tied to the chair. Paige's eyes were clear, focused. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "That's an interesting plan," Maya said, her voice suddenly stronger, no longer afraid. "Just one problem." "What's that?" Derek asked, genuinely curious. Maya smiled. "I recorded every word, and so did the FBI." Derek's face went white. "What?" Paige spit out the loosely tied gag. "Hi, Derek. Special Agent Paige Turner, FBI Organized Crime Division, currently on assignment with the Washington Chronicle as cover. You're under arrest, all 3 of you, for conspiracy, money laundering, murder, attempted murder of a federal witness, and threatening the life of an unborn child." The warehouse exploded with light and sound. FBI agents poured in from every entrance, tactical gear, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Derek spun, trying to aim at Maya, but Julian Hart appeared from behind a support beam like a fury, slamming into Derek with the full force of his body. The gun skittered across concrete. Agents tackled Derek, forcing him face down, cuffing his hands. Tory tried to run. "I have immunity. I've been cooperating with the FBI." "Ms. Blackwell," an FBI agent said, catching her arm, Any deals you might have had were voided the moment you actively participated in a plan to murder a pregnant federal witness. You're under arrest for conspiracy and accessory to attempted murder. Senator Vance, hands raised, was still trying to negotiate. I want my lawyer. I want to speak to the director. I'm a United States Senator. You're under arrest, Senator. You'll get your phone call after booking. Maya stood frozen in the center of it all, hand protectively on her stomach, adrenaline making her shake. Julian was at her side in seconds, his hands on her shoulders. Are you okay? The baby? Maya checked herself, assessing. No pain, no cramping, no bleeding. I think we're okay. We're both okay. Julian pulled her into his arms, not caring about the FBI agents swarming around them, not caring about maintaining professional distance. Don't ever do that again, Danina. Don't ever scare me like that again. I had to, for Paige, for my baby, for everyone Derek's hurt. I know, but next time we find a way that doesn't involve you standing in a warehouse with a gun pointed at you while pregnant. Maya almost laughed, giddy with relief and fading adrenaline. Next time you think I make a habit of this? Knowing you? Yes, absolutely yes. Derek, being dragged to his feet by agents, screamed at them. That's my child. You can't keep me from my child. I have rights. The lead FBI agent, a woman in her 50s with a face that had seen everything, responded coldly. Mr. Castellano, you just confessed on tape to planning to murder the mother of your unborn child in order to gain custody. You'll be lucky if you ever see daylight again, much less visitation rights. Your parental rights will be terminated before the child is born. Paige approached, freed from her restraints, rubbing her wrists. For the record, that was the dumbest, most brilliant thing you have ever done. Never, ever do it again. When did you join the FBI? Maya asked. 6 months ago. Confidential informant at first while I kept my journalist cover. Then they brought me in officially when Derek's organization got too big to ignore. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I couldn't compromise the investigation. I understand. I'm just glad you're okay. An agent approached. Ms. Sullivan, we're going to need your full statement and all the evidence you've been collecting. The SD card you mentioned? Maya pulled her father's pocket watch from her pocket, opened it, and removed the tiny SD card hidden inside. 3 years of work. 3 years of evidence. The last testament of 3 dead whistleblowers. Everything's here. Chain of custody is documented. It's all yours. The agent handled it like it was made of gold, which in a way, it was. What happens now? Maya asked. Now, Derek Castellano, Patricia Vance, and Victoria Blackwell are going to federal prison for a very long time. Your charges are dropped. Your disbarment will be overturned. You get your life back, Miss Sullivan. You and your baby are safe. Safe. The word felt foreign. Maya had been in danger for so long, she'd forgotten what safety felt like. Julian's hand found hers. Let's go home. Home, that felt foreign too. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to figure out what home meant. As they left the warehouse, rain still falling, FBI agents processing the scene, Maya leaned into Julian. He wrapped his arm around her, protective and warm. We did it, she said quietly. You did it. You were extraordinary. We were a team. Partners. Partners, Julian agreed. In everything, if you'll have me. Maya looked up at him. Let's get through the next few weeks first, but yeah, I'll have you. We both will. She placed her hand on her stomach. Julian's hand covered hers. And for the first time in months, Maya felt something other than fear and anger and determination. She felt hope. 5 days after the warehouse confrontation, Maya Sullivan stood in the Worthington Hotel Grand Ballroom for the 3rd time in her life. The first time, she'd been a disgraced prosecutor about to be arrested. The second time, she'd been Julian Hart's fake fiancée in a desperate arrangement. The third time, she was finally herself, vindicated and free. But she was also 8 weeks further into her pregnancy, showing more obviously now, facing a room full of people who'd watched her almost destroyed and now wanted to celebrate her resurrection. The FBI was being honored for dismantling one of the largest corruption networks in federal history. Politicians who'd supported Senator Vance scrambled to distance themselves, claiming they'd had no idea. Donors who'd given millions to Castellano charities insisted they'd been deceived. The powerful were performing that familiar dance of reputation salvage. and Maya Sullivan in a stunning black maternity gown that made her small but definite baby bump look elegant rather than scandalous, walked into the room with her head held absolutely high. Julian beside her, hand protectively on her lower back, his presence steady and reassuring. When they entered, a momentary hush fell over the crowd. Then the whisper started, but they were different now. That's Maya Sullivan. She's the one who exposed everything. She's pregnant. Can you imagine how brave she had to be? I heard Derek Castellano was the biological father. Can you imagine carrying your enemy's child while taking him down? Incredible. She risked everything. Her life, her baby's life, everything. The investors who'd believed Derek's lies at previous events now couldn't apologize fast enough. The same people who'd watched her almost get arrested now wanted to shake her hand, take photos with her, be associated with her story. Maya was gracious with each of them, one hand always resting on her bump. "We all believe what we're told by people we trust," she said to one particularly effusive apology. The trick isn't avoiding deception. It's verifying truth and protecting what matters most when you find it. Julian watched her navigate the social sharks with something approaching awe. These were the same people who'd been ready to see her destroyed 5 weeks ago. Now they treated her like a hero. The transformation was complete and absolute. Will appeared beside Julian, watching the same scene. "She's something else, isn't she?" "Yeah, she really is." "You going to tell her? Actually say the words?" "Tell her what?" "Oh, come on, that you're in love with her. That this stopped being business about 2 weeks ago, probably the moment she told you she was pregnant, and you went into full protection mode. That the contract is meaningless and has been for a while. That you want this to be real. The contract isn't up for 3 more weeks." "Julian," Will's voice was patient but firm. "The contract doesn't matter anymore. You know it. She probably knows it. The question is whether you're brave enough to admit it publicly, to risk actual vulnerability instead of hiding behind legal documents." Before Julian could respond, the FBI director took the stage and called for attention. The room quieted immediately, all eyes turning to the front. "Tonight, we're celebrating one of the Bureau's most significant victories against organized crime and corruption. But this victory wouldn't have been possible without the extraordinary courage of civilian witnesses, particularly one woman who risked everything, including her life and the life of her unborn child, to ensure justice was served." The director's eyes found Maya in the crowd. "Maya Sullivan, would you please join me?" Spotlight found her. The crowd erupted in applause, this time genuine and thunderous. Maya walked to the stage, hand on her bump, looking simultaneously proud and uncomfortable with the attention. "Maya Sullivan spent 3 years building a case against powerful criminals," the director continued. "She was systematically destroyed for her efforts, fired from her job, disbarred, had her reputation torn apart. She faced federal charges that we now know were completely fabricated. She lost her mother during this fight, and yet she never stopped pursuing truth and justice, even while pregnant, even while facing personal danger. She never quit." More applause. Maya's eyes were bright with the unshed tears. "Today I'm pleased to announce that all charges against Ms. Sullivan have been dropped. Her law license has been fully reinstated, and the Department of Justice has issued a formal apology for the failure of our system to protect her when she was acting in the public interest." The applause was deafening. Maya took the microphone, voice shaking slightly, hand on her bump. "Thank you, but I need to be clear about something. I didn't do this alone." She looked directly at Julian in the crowd. 4 weeks ago, I was at my absolute lowest point. I'd lost everything. I was alone, pregnant, and terrified. I was about to be arrested in this very room for crimes I didn't commit, and someone I barely knew stepped forward and said, "That's my fiancé." He didn't owe me anything. He had no reason to put himself at risk, but he gave me a chance when no one else would. He protected me and my child when we had nowhere else to turn. The moment was perfect, emotional, genuine. The crowd was captivated. Then a reporter pushed forward, breaking the moment. The man was young, aggressive, with the hungry look of someone chasing a headline. "Excuse me, Miss Sullivan, isn't it true that your engagement to Julian Hart was fake?" That he paid you $3.5 million to pretend to be his fiancée for 8 weeks? The room gasped collectively. Someone had leaked the contract. Of course someone had. And isn't it true that you're actually carrying Derek Castellano's child, not Julian Hart's? That you lied about the father to cover up your past relationship? Maya froze. The vindication she'd just earned, the respect she'd just regained, all of it was about to be destroyed by scandal again. So everything you just said about him giving you a chance, that was a transaction, wasn't it? You sold yourself and your baby for money. How is that different from what you accused Derek Castellano of doing? Aren't you just another person willing to do anything for money? The reporter's voice was rising, playing to the crowd, creating maximum drama. Maya looked at Julian, panicked. This was it, the moment where everything fell apart again. Her reputation, her baby's future, everything. And then Julian Alexander Hart walked through the crowd toward the stage with the calm confidence of a man who'd made a decision and would not be swayed from it. He took the microphone from Maya's trembling hands. "You're absolutely right," Julian said, his voice clear and carrying to every corner of the ballroom. 4 weeks ago, I offered Maya Sullivan a contract. I needed someone intelligent, capable, and principled for what I characterized as a business arrangement. She needed resources to clear her name and protect her unborn child. It was transactional, purely transactional. The crowd buzzed. Maya's heart sank. He was confirming it, admitting everything, destroying them both. But here's what that contract didn't account for. Julian turned to face Maya directly, and his expression was completely open, all his careful walls down. It didn't account for the fact that she's the bravest person I've ever met, that she fights for justice even when it costs her everything, that she walked into a warehouse with a gun pointed at her while pregnant, not to save herself, but to protect her friend and expose the truth, that she's brilliant, stubborn, principled, and completely impossible to manipulate. Believe me, I tried. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. The contract said 8 weeks. We're at week 4. And I realized something 3 nights ago, standing in a warehouse watching her risk her life and her baby's life to stop a murderer. I realized that contract was the stupidest thing I've ever written. He pulled a ring box from his pocket. The room erupted in gasps. Because you can't put a price on finding someone who makes you want to be better. Someone who reminds you that some things, like truth, like justice, like protecting an innocent child, are worth fighting for even when it costs you everything. Someone who sees through all your defenses and calls you out on your manipulation and still somehow decides you're worth trusting anyway. Julian got down on one knee, opened the ring box. The diamond caught the light, brilliant and real. 4 weeks ago, I introduced you as my fiancée to save you from humiliation. I told myself it was just business, just strategy, just another move in my corporate chess game. But somewhere between the fake engagement and right now, somewhere between the contract signing and this moment, I fell in love with you. His voice caught, raw emotion breaking through. And I fell in love with the baby you're carrying. Not because they're leverage, not because they're useful, not because of any strategic value, but because they're yours, because you're going to be an extraordinary mother, because this child will grow up seeing what it means to fight for what's right, to stand up against injustice, to be brave even when you're terrified. Maya's tears were flowing freely now, but she was smiling. Maya Grace Sullivan, Julian continued, will you marry me for real this time? No contract, no transaction, no 8-week limit, just us, you, me, and the baby. A real family, an honest family, a family built on truth instead of lies, on love instead of strategy, on partnership instead of manipulation. The room was utterly silent. Every person was holding their breath, watching this moment of absolute vulnerability from a man known for his emotional control. Maya looked at him, this complicated man who'd started as her captor, became her protector, and somehow became the person she trusted most in the world. You're supposed to ask me that in private, she said softly. After everything we've been through, I think we're past privacy. I want everyone to know. I want there to be no doubt. I want you and that baby to know that this is real. The contract specifically says no emotional entanglement. Breach it. Sue me. I have excellent lawyers. I'll lose happily. Maya laughed through her tears, hand pressed against her bump. What about the baby? Derek's baby? Julian's voice was fierce, absolute. Is your baby, your child, and if you'll let me, I'd like to be their father. Not biologically, I can't give them that, but in every way that actually matters. Let me be there when they're born. Let me teach them to play chess and stand up to bullies and fight for what's right. Let me change diapers at 3 a.m. and worry about their first day of school and walk them down the aisle someday. Let me be their dad, not because of biology, but because I'm showing up. Because I choose them. Because I choose you. Every day, for the rest of our lives. The tears were streaming down Maya's face now. This is insane. This is terrifying, Julian agreed, but I'm asking anyway. Marry me, for real, forever. Maya's voice was barely a whisper, then grew stronger. Yes, I'll marry you. We'll marry you. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Both of us, we both choose you. Julian stood, slid the ring on her finger, and kissed her as the ballroom erupted in applause. When they finally pulled apart, Maya whispered against his lips, "You know this baby isn't yours biologically." "Biology doesn't make a father," Julian whispered back. "Showing up does. Being present does. Loving them even when they're screaming at 3 a.m. or failing math class or making terrible teenage decisions. That's what makes a father. And I'm not going anywhere, ever. Even through midnight feedings and diaper changes and terrible twos and teenage rebellion and whatever else comes. Even through hostile takeovers by a toddler. Especially through hostile takeovers by a toddler. I'm in this, all of it, for better or worse, sickness and health, good times and terrible twos. They walked off stage together, hand in hand, as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions and the crowd applauded. This time, the spotlight didn't feel like exposure or humiliation. It felt like vindication, like truth, like the beginning of something real. 6 months passed. The Sullivan and Hart Legal Defense Fund opened its doors in a modern Georgetown office building. Maya's reinstated bar certificate hung on the wall beside her father's sheriff's badge in its frame. Photos from their small, private wedding ceremony, just Will and Paige as witnesses, a judge who owed Julian a favor. An ultrasound image labeled Baby Emma Grace Hart, due in 4 weeks, and newspaper headlines and frames, Castellano sentenced to 25 years, Vance gets 18, Blackwell cooperating witness receives reduced sentence. Maya sat at her desk, enormously pregnant now, phone to her ear with a new whistleblower who needed help. Yes, we can help. Document everything, don't delete anything. Whatever you do, don't resign. I'll have my team file protective paperwork by end of day. Julian entered with decaf coffee, kissed the top of her very pregnant belly first, then her lips, hand gently resting on the enormous bump. New case? He asked. The baby kicked hard. Julian felt it, smiled widely. Someone agrees with you. Will and Paige arrived for a board meeting, teasing about the couple's disgusting happiness. Maya's phone rang again. A distorted voice congratulated her on the impending baby, hinted at bigger corruption cases ahead. We'll be in touch after the baby comes. Maya set down the phone slowly, hand on her belly. Either a prank call or the beginning of something much bigger. Should I be worried? Julian asked. Maya stood, took his hand, placed it on her belly where their daughter was doing somersaults. Maybe, but whoever they are, they made one mistake. They think I'm still the woman who walked into that gala alone and afraid. They don't realize I've got backup now. And in 4 weeks, we'll have even more motivation to make the world safer. So whatever comes next, we face it together. Maya finished. You, me, and baby Emma. 4 months later, they returned to the Worthington Hotel ballroom one final time, 1 year after Derek's attempted humiliation. But now Maya wore a stunning gown, fully recovered from childbirth. Julian carried 4-month-old Emma Grace Hart, dressed in a tiny formal dress, her dark hair in wisps, her gray eyes so like her father's, taking in everything. The room that had once been the scene of Maya's destruction was now filled with people admiring their family. Emma gurgled happily, reaching for her mother's necklace, her grandfather's badge on a chain. A young paralegal approached nervously, reminded Maya of herself a year ago. The woman had found corruption at her firm, was scared, didn't know what to do. Maya, one hand on Julian's arm where he held Emma, spoke with gentle firmness. What you're feeling right now, that fear, that isolation, I've been exactly where you are. And I promise you, you're not alone. Call this number tomorrow. We'll protect you. We'll fight for you. We'll make sure the truth comes out. That's what we do. After the woman left, grateful and relieved, Julian smiled at Maya. You just took another case. I just saved another whistleblower. There's a difference. You know this is never going to end. There will always be another case. Maya looked at Emma, who was trying to grab Julian's nose. I know, and I want our daughter to grow up seeing that fighting for what's right matters, that standing up for people who can't fight for themselves is worth it. They walked to the exact spot where 1 year ago Derek had tried to destroy her and Julian had claimed her as his fiancée. Same place. Completely different ending. Do you ever think about that night? Maya asked. Every day. If you'd been arrested, if I hadn't been there. But you were, and here we are. Emma reached for Maya's necklace. Both parents smiled. 1 year ago, I walked into this ballroom believing I'd lost everything, Maya thought. A man I barely knew offered me a contract that felt like a cage. He tried to humiliate me. Instead, a billionaire introduced me as his fiancée and gave me a chance to fight back. They danced together, Emma sleeping peacefully in Julian's arms, safe and loved. Turns out, sometimes the cage is actually a door. Sometimes the person trying to control you is really trying to save you. And sometimes the contract that starts as business becomes the most honest thing you've ever signed. The fight for truth continues. So does the family. And that's exactly how it should be. 18 months after that night in the warehouse, Maya Sullivan Hart stood in her corner office, watching 1-year-old Emma Grace Hart toddle across the floor toward her father. The little girl had Julian's gray eyes and Maya's determined chin, and she was already showing signs of inheriting both parents' stubborn streak. Dada! Emma squealed, arms outstretched. Julian scooped her up, kissing her dark curls. Hello, troublemaker. Did you escape from Uncle Will again? She's fast, Will called from the doorway of the conference room. Also, she stole my pen. I think she's planning a hostile takeover of my office supplies. The Sullivan and Hart Legal Defense Fund occupied an entire floor now. What had started as Maya, Julian, and 2 junior associates had grown to a team of 15 attorneys, all dedicated to protecting whistleblowers. On the wall of the main conference room hung photographs. Maya's father's sheriff badge, her mother's hospice photo, Julian's foster sister, Emma's only picture, and now baby Emma's newborn hospital photo, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Maya's phone buzzed. Another whistleblower referral. A nurse who'd discovered her hospital was covering up medical errors. Scared. Alone. Facing retaliation. We'll take the case, Maya said into the phone. You did the right thing calling us. You're not alone anymore. She hung up and found Julian watching her, Emma balanced on his hip. That's the 5th case this week, he said. I know. You need rest. We have the charity gala tonight. I know that too. Maya stood stretching. But she needed to hear someone believed her. Someone would fight for her. Julian crossed to her, Emma between them, making it a 3-person hug. You're exactly like your father, he said softly. It's terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. Says the man who bought a hospital at 2 in the morning. Fair point. That evening, they returned to the Worthington Hotel ballroom, the scene of Maya's destruction and rebirth, now the venue for their foundation's annual fundraiser. As they entered, Emma in her tiny formal dress, heads turned not with judgment, but with respect. A young paralegal approached, trembling. Miss Sullivan Hart, I found something at my firm. Something wrong. I don't know what to do. Maya handed Emma to Julian, then gave the young woman her full attention. Tell me everything. And remember, you are not alone. That's what we do. We stand with people who stand for truth. Behind her, Julian watched his wife and daughter, thinking of foster homes and chessboards, and a pregnant prosecutor he'd tried to save with a contract. Best investment he'd ever made. And it had nothing to do with money. The Sullivan Hart family was in the justice business now. and business was good.